Santa Swami Shri Prabhupada ki Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So our host family, all of you, all 5 of you, do you know who is Lord Chaitanya? Little bit? Not at all. Not at all. Gaura. Okay. Well, not exactly. In our Vaishnav calendar, we're anticipating soon the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya came 500 plus years ago as to establish the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy name as the means of most ideal way of achieving spiritual perfection, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we're going to be reading some activities of his childhood. He appeared in a Brahmin family. Jagannath Mishra was his father, most learned person in the whole of Navadvip. Navadvip is a place in Bengal. He appeared in Bengal. And in his childhood, he was a scholar, super scholar. So we're going to be hearing some of his pastimes as a young boy. And then later, after his father died, he went to Gaya to perform Shraddha for his father. So we're going to hear those pastimes. Now this is from Chaitanya Bhagavat, written by Vrindavan Das Thakur, his Vrindavan Das Thakur's writing style is he's writing for Rasika Bhaktas. He's writing for devotees that have a feeling of love in their heart. He's not writing for the non-devotee audience and trying to help them understand anything. He's just spontaneously glorifying the Lord of his life from his heart pouring out. That's his style. So you'll hear some things that that's where it's coming from. Making no effort to persuade people, well, it's a little special, but it's okay because he doesn't do any of that. Just spontaneous glorification of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya's associate, Lord Nityananda. We just observed Lord Nityananda's appearance day, and now we're preparing for Lord Chaitanya's appearance day. So he's mentioning his name, Nityananda. Accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. After a few days, all the family friends came to observe the ceremony of the child's ear piercing and shaving of the head, leaving only a shikha. Within 2 or 3 days, the Lord completed his studies of the conjunct letters. Then he constantly wrote various names of Krishna day and night. He enthusiastically wrote and read the names of the Lord like Rama, Krishna, Murari, Mukunda, and Vanamali. the most fortunate persons of Nadia saw the Lord of Vaikuntha studying with other young boys. The Lord sweetly recited the Bengali alphabet, ka, ka, ga, ga. Everyone who heard him was captivated. Sri Gaurasundara performed wonderful pastimes. He would demand things that were impossible to obtain. If he saw a bird flying in the sky, he desired to have it. And when it was not given to him, he would cry and roll in the dust. Sometimes he would demand the moon or the stars in the sky, and when he did not get them, he cried and thrashed his arms and legs. Everyone tried to pacify him by taking him on their lap, but Vishwambar did not relent and continued to demand, "Give me, give me." There was, however, one sure remedy. Whenever he heard the names of Hari, he would stop crying. When everyone clapped their hands and chanted the name of Hari, he would be pacified and give up his restlessness. As everyone chanted the names of Hari, in order to please the child, the house of Jagannath Mishra appeared just like Vaikuntha. One day, in spite of everyone chanting the name of Hari, the Lord did not stop crying. They all said to him, "Listen, dear Nimai, come and dance nicely while we chant the name of Hari." The Lord did not listen to them and continued to cry, so they asked him, "Dear child, why are you crying?" They all asked him, "What do you want? We will bring it for you, but don't cry." The Lord replied, "If you want to save my life, then go quickly to the house of the two Brahmanas, Jagadish and Haranya. Both Jagadish and Haranya are great devotees, and I desire something from them. Today is Ekadasi, and they are both fasting, but they have prepared varieties of foodstuffs for Lord Vishnu. If I could eat their offering, I will be cured and able to walk." Hearing this impossible proposal, Mother Sachi lamented, "You are requesting something that is not sanctioned in the Vedas or in ordinary dealings." Those two Brahmanas were great Vaishnavas and dearest friends of Jagannath Mishra. The two Brahmanas exclaimed, "This is an amazing demand. We have never heard such an intelligent child. How did he know that today is Ekadasi? How did he know that we have prepared all kinds of foodstuffs for the Lord?" We can understand that since this child is so attractive, Gopal must have manifested in his body. Thinking like this, the two Brahmanas brought the various offerings and happily gave them to Nimai. The Lord was fully satisfied to receive that prasad, and he ate a little of each item. The Lord joyfully ate the foodstuffs that had been offered by his devotees. Thus, by his own will, his intense craving was appeased. Everyone present happily chanted the name of Hari as the Lord ate and danced to the chanting of his holy names. At noon, after their studies, the Lord and his friends joyfully went to bathe in the Ganges. Vishwambar, that's Lord Chaitanya, and his friends eagerly entered the Ganges, wherein they enjoyed splashing water on each other. As the Lord swam in the Ganges with his associates, sometimes he would dive below the surface, and sometimes he would float. In this way, he enjoyed various water sports. While engaged in water sports, Lord Gaurasundara would splash water with his feet on those nearby. People forbade him from doing this, but the Lord ignored them, and they were unable to catch him. The Lord compelled everyone to bathe again and again by touching them or spitting on them. Being unable to restrain him, the Brahmanas approached his father to complain about him. The Brahmanas said, "Dear friend, Jagannath Mishra, please hear about your son's misdeeds. Due to his misdeeds, we are unable to bathe properly." Someone said, "He splashes water on me and disturbs my meditation." Another complained, "Your son asked me, 'Who are you meditating on?' In Kali Yuga, I am directly Lord Narayana." Someone else said, "He stole my Shivalinga." And someone else said, "He ran away with my chadar." Someone said, "I kept the ingredients for worshipping Vishnu: flowers, durva, grass, boga, sandalwood pulp, and the Lord's asana on the bank of the Ganges. When I went to take bath, your son sat on the Lord's asana and ate the boga, smeared himself with the sandalwood pulp, decorating himself with the flowers, and ran off." Then he said, "Why are you unhappy? He for whom you arranged those ingredients has himself enjoyed them." Someone else said, "I was standing in the water, chanting my Gayatri, and he grabbed my feet and pulled me down." Another said, "He always takes my flower basket and fresh cloth." Someone else said, "He steals my Bhagavad Gita." Then someone complained, "My son is very young, and your son makes him cry by putting water in his ears." Another person said, "He comes behind me, climbs on my shoulders, and then jumps in the water, exclaiming, 'I am Lord Mahesha.'" Someone said, "Your son sits on my asana and eats the offerings I prepared for Lord Vishnu. Then he worships Lord Vishnu. When I come out from my bath, he throws sand on me. He is surrounded by all other mischievous boys. He exchanges the men's cloth with the women's. And then everyone is embarrassed when they go to dress. Oh, Jagannath Mishra, you are our dear friend. Therefore, we are informing you that your son does such things every day." At the same time, all the neighborhood girls approached Mother Sachi in an angry mood. They complained to Sachi. It doesn't give the text. It just says Adi 6, 74 through 100. Am I supposed to read that? No. That's next. The Brahmanas who had earlier complained to Jagannath Mishra in jest came and spoke to him again. "Whatever we said to you was simply in jest. Actually, there's no one more fortunate than you in the three worlds. How can one be affected by hunger, thirst, or lamentation if he has such a son at home? You are certainly most fortunate to have the Supreme Lord as your son and serve his lotus feet. Even if Ishvambar commits millions of offenses, we will keep him in our hearts." Because these Brahmanas had all been devotees of Krishna for many lifetimes, they had fine intelligence. In this way, the Lord enjoyed various pastimes with his eternal servants, which ordinary people cannot understand. I think there's something missing. This is, the girls complaining to Sachi is missing. Vishwarup took sannyas. Vishwarup is his elder brother. Nimai, or Lord Chaitanya, had an elder brother who was named Vishwarup. Vishwarup took sannyas. The father, Jagannath Mishra, disappeared from this world, leaving Mother Sachi alone. Mother Sachi wanted her son to be married. There was an arrangement for her son's marriage to Lakshmi Priya. And then, so it's like, this is the sequence of the pastimes. And then Lord Chaitanya meets his spiritual master, Ishwara Puri. Sri Gaurasundar, with book in hand, always enjoyed pastimes in Navadvip. He challenged any teacher he would meet, but none of them had the power to defeat him. Although he was simply a student of grammar, he nevertheless considered the learned Bhattacharyas to be as insignificant as grass. The self-satisfied Lord traveled throughout Navadvip with his most fortunate students. Every afternoon, Nimai would sit on the bank of the Ganges with his students. In the evening, all the Vaishnavas also gathered on the bank of the Ganges. As they listened to Nimai's explanation from a distance, they felt both happiness and lamentation. One of them said, "Oh, if anyone who possesses such beauty and knowledge does not worship Krishna, there is no benefit." Someone else said, "When he sees someone, he doesn't allow him to leave. He captures him just like a tax collector captures a debtor." Another said, "This Brahmana has uncommon potency. I think he must be some great personality. Although he constantly asks shrewd questions, we still get great satisfaction just by seeing him. We have never seen such knowledge in an ordinary person. Our only regret is that he doesn't worship Krishna." In his childhood pastimes, Lord Chaitanya was not acting as a devotee. He was a non-devotee, or not devoted to Vishnu or Krishna scholar, but super scholar. And there was a purpose behind it. The purpose behind it was that later in his life, he will become a very deep worshipper of Krishna. And some scholarly people say, "Oh, he's weak-minded. Because he's weak-minded, doesn't have strong intelligence, he's left the path of knowledge and gone to this sentimental path of devotion." So he purposely showed pastimes where he was very, very strong in scholarship and not a devotee. Then he became initiated, he became a super devotee. It's a pastime with purpose. The Vaishnavas all requested each other, "Bless Nimai, so that his mind will be fixed on Krishna." They then offered their obeisances on the bank of the Ganges and blessed Nimai with a prayer. "O Krishna, please let the son of Jagannath Mishra become absorbed in you without deviation. Let him constantly worship you in love, O Lord. Please let us have such association." The Lord accepted the devotee's blessings on his head, for devotional service to Lord Krishna is attained only by the blessings of devotees. Someone directly told Nimai, "Why are you wasting your time with mundane education?" Another person said, "Look, Nimai, what do you gain from studying? Just worship Krishna. Why do people study? Education is only for understanding devotional service to Lord Krishna. If that purpose is not served, then what is the use of all your education?" The Lord smiled and said, "I am most fortunate, for you are all teaching me that devotional service to Krishna is the essence of all education. I've already decided that after teaching a little while, I will go serve a pure devotee." After saying this, the Lord smiled at his servants. By his influence, however, no one could recognize him. In this way, Nimai attracted the hearts of everyone. There was no one who escaped his power of attraction. One day, on the pretext of sickness due to excessive gas, the Lord manifested transformations of ecstatic love. The Lord suddenly uttered some unworldly sounds. Then he laughed as he rolled on the ground and nearly damaged the house. He roared loudly and challenged everyone like a wrestler. Then he beat whoever he could catch. When Nimai's friends and relatives heard about his gastric disorder, they came running to treat him. Buddhimanta Khan, Mukunda Sanjaya, and their associates all came to the Lord's house. They applied some medicinal oils on the Lord's head and tried to cure him any way they could. The Lord performs various pastimes by his own sweet will. How can he be cured by some external remedies? All the limbs of the Lord shivered. He shouted loudly in such a way that everyone was frightened. He then declared, "I am the Lord of all. I maintain the universe, therefore I am named Vishvambar. I am the Supreme Lord, but no one recognizes me. Saying this, the Lord tottered, and everyone tried to catch him. In this way, the Lord manifested himself on the pretext of gastric disorder, yet by the influence of his own illusory energy, no one could understand him. And as a student, he would teach his classes, go for lunch, and then he would travel walking around in the marketplace in the town. He had a discussion with a weaver. Although Sri Sachinandan is rarely seen even by the demigods, he now wandered through the streets of Navadvip within the sight of all. One day, the Lord went to the house of a weaver, and the weaver respectfully offered him obeisances to a Brahmana, a Vaishya to a Brahmana, offering him respects. The Lord said, "Bring me one nice piece of cloth." And the weaver immediately brought some cloth. The Lord then asked, "What is the price of this cloth?" The weaver replied, "Give me whatever you like." After settling the price, the Lord said, "I do not have any money right now." The weaver then said, "Oh, Gosai, you can give me in 10 or 15 days. You take the cloth and happily wear it. You can pay me whenever you please." After mercifully glancing at the weaver, the Lord continued on to the house of a cowherd. Mahaprabhu sat down on the cowherd's veranda and began to make fun of the activities of the Brahmanas. The Lord said, "O son, bring me some milk and yogurt. Today I'm going to accept charity from your house." The cowherd men thought Nimai looked just like Cupid. They respectfully offered him a nice asana. They began to joke with the Lord and address him as uncle. One of them said, "Come, uncle, let us go eat some rice." Then one of them took Nimai on his shoulder and carried him to his house. Another said, "Don't you remember how you previously ate all the rice in my house?" Although the cowherd boys didn't realize it, by the grace of the transcendental goddess of learning, Saraswati, whatever they spoke was true. Meanwhile, Nimai simply smiled at their words. All the gopas then happily offered the Lord milk, ghee, yogurt, cream, and butter. After being satisfied by the cowherds, the Lord went to the house of a perfume merchant. The merchant offered his respectful obeisances to the Lord, who said, "O brother, bring me some of your best perfume." The perfume merchant immediately brought some of his best perfume, and Sachinandan inquired, "What is the price?" The merchant replied, "You know, my dear sir, is it befitting for me to take money from you? Today you apply this oil and go home. If, after taking bath tomorrow, the fragrance still remains, then you may pay me whatever you like." After saying this, the merchant happily applied the perfume on the body of the Lord. The Lord is the supersoul of all living entities, therefore he attracts the mind of all. Who is not attracted by seeing his beautiful form? After Vishvambar bestowed his mercy on the merchant, he continued on to the house of a florist. When the florist saw Nimai's most wonderful form, he offered him obeisances and a place to sit. The Lord said, "O florist, I would like a nice garland, but I have no money with me." Appreciating that Nimai had the symptoms of a spiritually perfect soul, the florist said, "You do not need to pay." After saying this, the florist garlanded the Lord, who smiled in the company of his students. After casting his merciful glance on the florist, Gauranga went to the house of a betel nut merchant. The merchant saw Nimai's form as more enchanting than that of Cupid. He took dust from Nimai's feet and offered him a place to sit. The merchant said, "It is my great fortune that you have come to my house, insignificant as I am." In full satisfaction, and without being asked, the merchant then offered betel nut to the Lord, who smiled. The Lord then said, "Why did you give me betel nut without payment?" The merchant replied, "I was inspired to." The Lord smiled on hearing the merchant's reply, and he chewed the betel nut with great satisfaction. The merchant then devotedly offered nimai sampan, camphor, and other spices, free of cost. After blessing the merchant, Gaura smiled as he continued wandering the streets of Navadvip. The city of Navadvip was just like Mathura. Millions of people belonged to different castes, lived there. For the pleasure of the Lord, the Creator had previously supplied Navadvip with all opulences. The son, Asachi, now enjoyed the same pastimes that Krishna had previously enjoyed while wandering the streets of Mathura. Thereafter, Gaura visited the house of a conch merchant who offered the Lord due respects. The Lord said, "Dear brother, let me see some beautiful conchs. But alas, how will I take? I have no money." Just then the merchant placed a beautiful conch in Nimai's hand and offered him obeisances, saying, "O Gosai, take this conch home with you. You may pay me later or not. It doesn't matter." Pleased by the words of the conch merchant, the Lord glanced mercifully on him and departed. In this way, the Lord visited every house in Navadvip. For this reason, even today, the residents of Navadvip attain the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Then comes very interesting, the astrologer. Wonderful pastime. The supremely independent Lord Gaurachandra then went to the house of an astrologer. As the astrologer saw the effulgence of the Lord, he humbly offered his obeisances. The Lord asked, "I've heard that you're a good astrologer. Could you please tell me who I was in my previous birth?" The pious astrologer agreed to the Lord's request and began to chant the Gopal mantra within his mind. At that moment, the astrologer saw a beautiful blackish personality with 4 hands, holding conch, disc, club, and lotus flower. His chest was decorated with Srivatsa and brilliantly effulgent Kaustubha gem. He saw the Lord in the prison cell, being offered prayers by his parents at the dead of night. He then saw Vasudeva carrying the Lord that night to Gokula. The astrologer again saw the Lord as an enchanting, 2-armed, naked child with a string of small bells around his waist and butter in his 2 hands. The astrologer saw his worshipable Lord decorated with all the symptoms that he had meditated on. He then again saw the 3-fold bending form of the Lord playing on his flute and surrounded on all sides by the gopis who were singing and playing various musical instruments. After seeing this wonderful vision, the astrologer opened his eyes and saw Gauranga standing before him. Then again he entered into meditation. The astrologer said, "Oh, Bal Gopal, please listen. Quickly show me who this Brahmana was." The astrologer saw the Lord with greenish durva grass complexion, holding a bow in his hand and sitting on a royal throne. Thereafter he saw the Lord in the middle of the waters of devastation. He had the wonderful form of a boar, and he held the earth on his tusks. He then saw the Lord as Nrsimha. Although he appeared most ferocious, he was the ultimate well-wisher of his devotees. Next, he saw the form of Vamana, waiting to deceive Bali at his sacrifice. Then he saw the form of Matsya, happily sporting in the waters of devastation. The pious astrologer then saw the intoxicated form of Lord Balaram, holding a plow and club in his hands. He next saw the form of Lord Jagannath, with Balaram on his right and Subhadra in between. In this way, the astrologer saw the Lord's various incarnations, but due to the Lord's illusory energy, he was unable to ascertain the meaning of what he had seen. The astrologer was struck with wonder and thought, I think that this Brahmana is expert in the chanting of mantras. Otherwise, he may be a demigod who has come disguised as a Brahmana to test me. I see a supernatural effulgence emanating from the body of this Brahmana. Has he come to discredit me? The Lord smiled and asked the thoughtful astrologer, Who am I? What did you see? Tell me everything in detail. The astrologer replied, You please go home for now. I will tell you everything in the afternoon, after I peacefully chant my mantra. Smiling, the Lord agreed to the astrologer's request and went to the house of his dear devotee, Sridhar. Kultivate your Sridhar. Cultivate your Sridhar. Sridhar was very dear to the Lord's heart, and the Lord would therefore visit him on various pretexts. The Lord would tease Sridhar in the course of their regular conversations, which would last for an hour or two. When Sridhar saw that Nimai had arrived, he offered him obeisances and a place to sit. Sridhar was always peaceful in his behavior, while the Lord enjoyed playing the role of an agitated young man. The Lord said, Sridhar, you always chant the name of Hari, so why are you always afflicted by poverty? Can you please tell me why, after serving the beloved Lord of Lakshmi, you do not get sufficient food or clothes? Sridhar replied, At least I'm not starving, and whether small or large, I'm still wearing some cloth. The Lord said, But I see your cloth is mended in 10 places, and the roof of your cottage has no straw. Look at other people. They worship Chandi and Vishahari, so they have no scarcity for food or cloth. Sridhar then replied, O Brahmana, what you say is indeed correct. Yet the time passes equally for everyone. The king has jewels in his house, and he eats opulent food. Meanwhile, the birds live in trees. Yet time passes equally for everyone, as they all enjoy the fruits of their previous activities by the will of the Lord. The Lord then said, You have great wealth that you are secretly enjoying. I will soon disclose this to everyone. Then how will you cheat us? His wealth is wealth of devotion. Sridhar said, Oh, Pandit, please go home now. It is not proper for us to argue. The Lord said, I am not going to leave you so easily. First tell me what you'll give me. Sridhar said, I maintain myself by selling leaf cups. So tell me, what can I give you, Gosai? The Lord said, Let your hidden treasure remain for now. I'll take that later. For now, give me some bananas, banana flowers, and banana stalks free of charge. Then I won't argue with you anymore. Sridhar thought, this Brahmin is very aggressive. I'm afraid that one day he will beat me. But even if he beats me, what can I do to a Brahmana at the same time? I can't supply him free of charge every day. Anyway, whatever this Brahmana takes by force or deceit, that is my good fortune, so I'll continue to give him every day. Thinking this way, Sridhar said, Listen, Gosai, don't worry about money. I'll happily give you some bananas, banana flowers, leaf cups, and banana stalks, but please, don't fight with me. The Lord said, Good. Then I won't fight anymore, but see that I get good quality bananas and banana stalks. The Lord daily used Sridhar's leaf cups, and he ate sabjis made from Sridhar's plantains, banana flowers, and banana stalks. Whenever a squash grew on the roof of Sridhar's cottage, the Lord would eat it, cooked with milk and black pepper. The Lord then said, Tell me, What do you think of me? After you answer this, I'll go home. Sridhar replied, you're a Brahmana, a portion of Lord Vishnu. The Lord said, you don't know. Actually, I'm from a Gopa family. Although you see me as the son of a Brahmana, I consider myself a cowherd boy. Sridhar smiled at the Lord's words, but due to the illusory energy, he could not recognize his Lord. The Lord then said, Sridhar, tell me the truth. The glories of your Ganges are due to me. And let me tell you the truth. The glories of your Ganges are due to me. Sridhar replied, Nimai Pandit, aren't you afraid of insulting Ganga in this way? One is supposed to become sober as he grows up, but I see your restlessness has doubled. After joking with Sridhar in this way, Gauranga returned to his home. Sri Gaurasundara sat down at the door of his Vishnu temple, and his students all returned to their homes. As Nimai saw the full moon one night, his heart became absorbed in the mood of Sri Vrindavan Chandra. Nimai began to play a flute in a most enchanting tune, which only Mother Sachi could hear. When Mother Sachi heard the sound of that flute, which attracts the three worlds, she fell unconscious in ecstasy. After a while, she regained consciousness and steadied her mind as she continued listening to the wonderful sound of the flute. Sachi then noticed that the enchanting sound of the flute was coming from the direction where Nimai was sitting. Mother Sachi came outside in astonishment and saw that her son was sitting at the door of the Vishnu temple. She could no longer hear the sound of the flute, but when she saw the full moon on the chest of her son, seeing the moon on the chest of her son, Sachi was struck with wonder and began looking around. Mother Sachi then went back inside and began to think about the reason for such a vision. In this way, the most fortunate Mother Sachi saw unlimited manifestations of opulence. Whoever receives the merciful glance of Mother Sachi becomes eligible to see such opulences. In this way, Sri Gaurasundara, who is non-different from Lord Krishna, lived in Navadvip incognito while relishing his own ecstasy. Although the Lord manifested his opulences in various ways, his servants were still unable to recognize him. So that's the end of the reading for this evening. According to the Vedic texts, there are different categories of avatars. There's guna avatars, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. There's Leela avatars, Matsya Kurma, Nrsimha, Varaha, Vamana, and so forth. Manvantar avatars, the avatars of the Manus. The Guna avatars, already mentioned, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Shaktivesh avatars, avatars that are empowered souls, carrying out some function on behalf of the Lord, like Prithu, an incarnation of ruling potency, King Prithu. And there's Yuga avatars. Yuga avatars are forms of the Lord that appear in each age to give to the age, the people of that age, the means of achieving perfection. And Lord Chaitanya is one of those, Yuga avatar. He appeared at the beginning of this age of Kali for propagating the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy name. And when he appeared, he's also described as being a Chana avatar, or a covered incarnation. That is to say, he appeared as a devotee of Krishna, but he's Krishna. He's an avatar of Krishna, or form of Krishna appearing in this world. So he was concealing his identity by his spiritual potency. although he would show in various ways his divinity or his transcendental nature to others, they couldn't see it. Like this example of playing the flute. He would do things like, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill. And the residents of Vrindavan, they didn't think, oh, he must be God. They didn't think that way because of the influence of the Lord's Yogamaya potency. So similarly, in his childhood pastimes, he did things. These going to the merchants, my understanding of one of the things he was doing was he was giving them the opportunity for service. Because he was a Brahmana, they would offer charity to a Brahmana. And by offering charity to a Brahmana, they would get spiritual benefit. But what to speak of a Brahmana, he's the personality of Godhead. And so they were rendering devotional service to the personality of Godhead by his going from house to house and shop to shop and requesting things for people. Because Vaishyas, as you know very well, they like the barter in exchange. They like setting a price and they enjoy it, part of being a Vaishya. So he would engage in Vaishya talk with them for their pleasure. But then by his divinity, they would just be overwhelmed with his beauty or his opulence or just his spiritual presence. They would just generously give things, which was for their benefit. Not that he needed a conch shell or he needed some betel nuts or something like that. It was the loving reciprocation and engaging others in service. This was Nimai's behavior. And as he was going from these shops to shops, his students were with him. They're young Brahmin boys, but he is naturally their leader. As the personality of Godhead, he's naturally their leader. So they all looked up to him. And he had wonderful pastimes with his associates. Like it said, when Krishna, of course it wasn't on a daily basis, it just was one day, he entered Mathura with Akrura. And with Balaram, they went here and there to different places in Mathura. And he was enjoying himself. So Nimai was doing the same. He was enjoying himself. These just loving exchanges with his devotees in various ways. We heard that Nityananda, who later became the constant companion of Lord Chaitanya, just like Balaram was the constant companion of Krishna during his pastimes. Nityananda was the constant companion of Lord Chaitanya during Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. But in the early stages, like Balaram had gone on tour during the Kurukshetra battle, he refused to take part in the battle, so he went to holy places. So Nityananda went to holy places when he was young. And he was waiting and waiting and waiting for Lord Chaitanya to begin his devotee pastimes. So tomorrow we're going to hear about beginning his devotee pastimes. And then the two lords joined one another. All of this is anticipation. Later in the month of March, there's going to be the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. So we're warming up for that, preparing ourselves by filling our thoughts with Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and to some degree, his teachings. He taught by his example. So let's see if there's some comments or discussion. Chaitanya Bhagavat. You have something? No? our host or hostess, something? Okay. Hearing pastimes is not the usual thing for questions and discussion, so there may not be any. That's okay.
And when I heard about Kolavecha Sridhar, his quality of the last sentence that you read about how he was offering, whether or not he gets any payment or any kind of recognition, anything like in return. Even though it was between Lord Chaitanya and Kolavecha Sridhar, but just taking that as a principle, I felt it was such a Brahmanical kind of a quality to just offer without, whether even in adverse situations, being able to offer.
Well, that's a devotional, not a Brahminical quality. For the others here, Kolavechar Sridhar was very poor. He was a Vaishya. His income was, the place where he lived, there was a grove of banana trees. So he would take the banana leaves, the banana flowers, and the bananas. And with the leaves, he would make leaf cups and leaf plates. So what's the cost involved? Zero, because it's just trees. But people can get banana leaves and bananas without any cost anyways, because they're just growing wild all over Bengal. But that was what he did. So he couldn't charge much. He set up a little place by the side of the path, and as people would by, they would purchase. And he would get next to nothing, and he would take half of next to nothing for the worship of Ganges. And then the other half would be his maintenance. And so, like it's mentioned, his cloth was full of holes. His roof didn't even have a roof, full of holes. He was poor. But Lord Chaitanya appreciated his devotion and his quality. He is an eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya. And so they would have these exchanges. It's sometimes in loving dealings, there's an exchange where it's sweet and it's also teasing. Sometimes, some relationships are like that, loving relationships. And so Lord Chaitanya would come to tease, or joke, or cajole. And Kolavechar Sridhar was always being respectful, and it was yet always devotional. His quality was undisturbed, even when provoked by teasing words. He remained always respectful. There's a later, just responsive to this, his mood of making offerings. In a later section of Lord Chaitanya's life in Navadvip, there was a time after he had become a devotee where he performed the Leela that went on all night long. The Leela was in the house of one of his principal associates, Srivas. We have in our Panchatattva, Jai Shri Krishna, Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. So Srivas was a Brahmana in Navadvip, and at the house of Srivas, in the evening, they would have kirtan. After people would do their daily duties, they would have their evening meal, then they would go to the house of Srivas and they'd have kirtan. And the kirtan became so ecstatic. It got to the point where it would just go on into the night, and eventually went on all night long into the next morning. And then the next day, and then the next day, it became like a thing. All the Vaishnavas would come, and they would join the kirtan at Srivas's home. So one evening, Lord Chaitanya got in a particular mood, where right in the middle of kirtan, he was dancing and suddenly left the kirtan and went and sat right on the altar of Vishnu, and said, "Worship me." So they all ran and got the paraphernalia for worshiping the deity, and they worshipped Lord Chaitanya with all the paraphernalia you worship a deity with. And then he performed the pastime of calling the devotees forward one by one and telling them who they were in Krishna Lila, because they're his eternal associates, and disclosed their glories and their everything. And after some time, he was doing this all night long, he said, "Go find Sridhar." And although there was no street lights, the place where Sridhar lived is a few miles from where Srivas's home was, and there was no street lights. So just follow, and you'll hear a loud chanting of the holy name. That's where Sridhar's home is. So they got to Sridhar's home, they followed Lord Chaitanya's instruction, and they invited him to come to the place where this Sridhar, where Srivas Thakur's home was. He was shy, but he came because it was the Lord's request. And when the Lord brought him before him, he said, "You're Prahlad Maharaj. And ask from me any benediction you want." And he cried and said, "I just want to be in your association lifetime after lifetime. You can come and tease me and take from me all of my wares, whatever you like. It's your pleasure. I'm here for your pleasure. Please just engage me in your pastimes and your activities lifetime after lifetime." Normally, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not disclosing his divinity, but in this particular occasion, he was directly disclosing his divinity and disclosing the eternal relationship between his associates and himself. The very special Mahaprakash Leela, it's called. So, back to your question, Sridhar was not just, kind and generous even when provoked. He was a perfect devotee in a very interesting, different relationship with Lord Chaitanya. He was satisfied with whatever came his way by nature's arrangement. He was not in material want or hankering. He was his happiness was within. His happiness was in devotion and his relationship with Lord Chaitanya. And because of that, Lord Chaitanya came every day. There's one more pastime with Kulavechar Sridhar that's a celebrated pastime, and that is the Brahmanas began complaining. The Smarta Brahmanas began complaining about the loud kirtan at Srivas's home. They went to the Kazi and said, "This is not anywhere in our Vaishnava scriptures. You should stop it. You're the Kazi." So the Kazi tried to stop it. He sent some constables and told the people, "No more kirtan, and if you continue, we'll break the drum." And that message got to Lord Chaitanya, and he said, all right, we're going to perform civil disobedience. Assemble all the Vaishnavas, and we'll have kirtan going through all the marketplaces throughout all of Navadvip. And bring torches, so we'll do it all night, all day long, and into the night we'll go to the house of the Qazi and challenge him. You can't stop Sankirtan. So there was some discussion between the Qazi and Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, the Qazi was afraid because angry Bengalis and one Qazi. So he came downstairs from his palace and sat down and said, your father and I were very close friends. His father is now deceased. And you're like my son. I take you as like my son. So, please tell your friends here to not cause any problem. He said, we haven't come to cause problem, we've come to discuss with you. And they had some discussion. The end of the discussion was the Qazi said, the Sankirtan can go on in the whole of Navadvip during my rule, and as long as I have sons that rule succeeding me. The Sankirtan the congregational chanting of the holy name can go on unobstructed. There's some nice details in that whole exchange. So after that, Lord Chaitanya, there was fear of the Qazi and his constables, but now that fear was taken away. So Lord Chaitanya went straight away from the Qazi's home to Sridhar's home. He had affection for Sridhar. And when he reached Sridhar's home, he was thirsty. So he saw outside Sridhar's home an iron pot. It was all beaten up because he was poor. And he started drinking from the iron pot. And Sridhar held his hand and said, please don't drink, this is not fit for you. He said, any water that's from your home, from your iron pot, is my greatest happiness. They had a very unique, affectionate relationship. So that was, back to your question, his nature was very devoted and very loving. Not just Brahminical and willing to sacrifice. It was with pure devotion. That was Kolavich or Sridhar. Although materially, poor. Educationally, not highly elevated. Devotionally, topmost devotee. And very dear to Lord Chaitanya. I mean, some of Lord Chaitanya's associates were most highly learned. But what was attractive to Lord Chaitanya was the devotion. And that's what he reciprocated with, the devotion. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
You mentioned, Maharaj, that devotees normally very satisfied with the income and what they have.
Move your mask so I can hear you better. It's a little muffled. Thanks.
You mentioned that devotee satisfied with income or the Lakshmi they generate, whatever they have. How to be satisfied in real life, like whatever we have, and especially like for myself, I've been supporting family from very young age, working with long hours, and it just has become a routine and a habit. So now I find myself to slow down very hard, and I keep going, even though sometimes we have everything, but just not for the making more Lakshmi. It's just a lifestyle that you keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how to stop that? How to be
Good
satisfied in life?
Excellent question. And you picked up on the essence of the Kolovich or Sridhar story. You picked up on it. Congratulations. And the others were also quite satisfied because of their reciprocation, the presence of Lord Chaitanya. Now, so to dial down the accumulation, the best antidote is to dial up devotion. But it's difficult because one is apparently in conflict with the other. The time, energy, mental energy, effort, focus, to be materially successful, it requires all those things. Spiritual association teaches the dial down, that is, be satisfied with what comes of its own accord. A devotee, grahastha, will apply themselves, in a responsible way, according to their family's needs and so forth and so on. But meanwhile, invest time in the eternal destination of the soul. It takes Krishna will give the intelligence, the how-to part. It's at the heart level. Let's just say this. Aside from the state that you're in today, how many hours did you invest in preparing the education that it took to get you to where you have the occupation you have today? Many, 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 many hours. And that was for a purpose. I mean, I'm going to become an adult, I'm going to have a wife and family, and I need to provide for them, so I'm preparing for the future, now, for the future. Very good. So now you've reached that status. Now what's the future after this? How are you preparing yourself for what comes next? Now, the material side is really easy to figure that one out. And to apply oneself, because, that's what everybody's doing. In this plane of material existence is called Bhumandala, the plane of fruitive activity. So we just do the fruitive activity program. But to go after this lifetime, where is the soul going? How am I preparing myself for where's the soul going after this lifetime? That takes a higher intelligence than fruitive activity. So spiritual activity is required. And spiritual activity starts with spiritual association, sadhu sangha. And sadhu sangha comes in the form of what we're doing right now. And hearing Bhagavad Gita, discussing Bhagavad Gita in the sangha of others, and then learning how to apply that principle. So there's purification and application from sadhu sangha. And so when there's a deeper satisfaction within, that which is extraneous fades naturally. Naturally. Say the opposite. If there isn't sadhu sangha, then spiritual awareness and spiritual hankering isn't going to awaken. And so one will continue and continue. So at the juncture where there's some spiritual association and looking at, the life that I have of, I'm on a what do you call it? A conveyor belt, and it just keeps moving and keeps moving and keeps moving. It keeps moving and keeps moving, and how do I get off? Well, it's not exactly get off, it's just dial it down. And let that become satisfied, exactly what your question was, become satisfied with what comes of its natural accord, but consciously choose through association, to strengthen it, choose to give attention to the eternal, where the soul is going after this life. Just like during the education period, what's going to be my situation after when I'm a young adult? So now that you're not just a young adult anymore, what comes next? What's the destiny of the soul? And invest in that. As you invest in that, the dialing down takes place naturally. Most light switches in homes, they're on and off, called rocker arm switch. But some are dimmer switches. So what I'm speaking about is a dimmer switch. As the light goes on, the darkness dissipates. And you just turn the dial. And don't try to do it too much, too fast. But, dial up the devotional practices and activities. And automatically, naturally, the other will dial down. And you're doing so with a purpose, that there's a sankalpa. There's an intention behind the whole thing. And the intention behind the whole thing is not just moving from something that's mechanical and, maybe a little distasteful, is to something that is a little more tasty, a little more attractive. So it's the human mission. Human life is meant for that, not for just fruitive work. Human life is an opportunity to go on the other side of fruitive work, into devotional life. Other life forms can't. The capacity isn't there. And most of the human species are very, very involved in fruitive activity, so it's easy. It's just, all the other kids are doing it. You just do it. But the satisfaction is missing on a deeper level. So, devotee, sadhu sangha is the principle. There's a whole chapter, in your question, there's a whole chapter in the Bhagavatam that it answers your question. It's really nice. Devahuti asks Kapila Dev essentially the same question. Too much affinity for the temporary. What do I do? And Kapila says sadhu sangha. That's the whole chapter. And through sadhu sangha, then you do with sadhus what sadhus do, and that's devotional activity. That gives a support structure for ongoing progress in the devotional direction. Sadhu sangha. Hearing and chanting, discussing. And by that, automatically remembrance comes. Your thoughts become directed towards the spiritual side. It doesn't mean you become irresponsible in the material side, but spiritual intelligence is active and will grow just by cultivation through sadhu sangha. It's Canto 3. You have Bhagavatam in your home? Canto 3, Chapter 25. Anything? Okay.
This is from Apurva Anand. Can we have a desire to earn huge wealth for building temples and distributing books in service to Srila Prabhupada? I always think that if I have this desire, I may get doomed. But if I construct temples and distribute books, others will get a lot of benefit. Is my thought process wrong?
No. But generally, such thought process gets mixed up with other things quickly. Saying it notionally and having that actually, what's the consciousness driving the machine, generally the second one doesn't happen. It remains notional and gets lost in the complexities of material life. Generally, that's what happens. Okay. We're done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.